Second meeting of the House Budget Review Subcommittee on Transportation. We'll go ahead and get started and ask Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Branscombe.
Present.
Representative Dietz.
Here.
Representative Huff.
Here.
Representative McPherson.
Here.
Representative Palumbo. Representative Smith. Representative Tackett Lafferty. Representative Blanton. Representative Bowling.
Here.
Representative Bray.
Present.
Representative Petrie.
Here.
Chair Upchurch.
Here. We do have a quorum. We're constituted to do business. Need a motion for the approval of the January 29th, 2024 minutes. Got a motion and a second? Got a second. All members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. All right. Next on the agenda is revenue sharing flex funding. We have with us today Secretary Gray and Bobby Joe Lewis, Commissioner of Rural Roads. Please come forward. Introduce yourselves for the record, and you may begin.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Gray, Transportation Secretary.
Bobby Joe Lewis, Commissioner of Rural and Municipal Aid.
All right. So I will start, Mr. Chairman, and introduce Commissioner Bobby Joe Lewis from the Department of Rural and Municipal Aid. But before I do that, I want to say thanks to all of you for your public service. I try to remember to do that, having walked in your shoes and moccasins occasionally myself. I know what an effort that can be. And so thank you very much, everybody. I'll soon turn it over to Commissioner Lewis to give an update on the two funding programs administered by her department. That's Flex Funds and the Highway Contingency Fund, that is also known as AKA FD 39. As you know, these programs help cities and counties
Secretary,
keep.
Can you pull your mic just a little bit
yes,
closer?
sir.
There you go.
Is that better?
That's perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
As you may know, these programs help cities and counties keep what are often aging and deteriorating local roads in better shape of repair. The Flex Fund is a revenue sharing program that benefits county governments. While it's not a statutory program, the Transportation Cabinet shares state rural secondary funds within the counties. And the amount we are able to share is based on evaluations done by our Division of Maintenance staff every 2 years. The rural secondary road condition scale ranges from A to D. The higher the rating, the more we consider sharing. Now, while the percentages get adjusted every 2 years and could change the amount we're able to flex from rural secondary to local roads, the total revenue shared funding for the counties would not change. It's a collaborative process, and Commissioner Lewis will share more of the details on this. We got to speak before you all last month about our highway contingency funding. This funding is essential and critical for cities and counties to address urgent or overdue needs that impact safety and don't have already the benefit of, and don't often have the benefit, rather, of waiting to be fixed or programmed. I think that I would punctuate that they don't often have the benefit of waiting to be fixed or programmed. And we still have a very large backlog, something like $39 million of projects that are ranked in the highest need category. And that list evolves. It's really a snapshot in time at any time. It evolves as new projects are requested and as previously requested projects get completed by local governments who tapped into other funding to get their work done. We have a process in place to confirm the status of projects before issuing funds to make sure that no double funding does occur. Okay, I will turn it over to Commissioner Bobby Joe Lewis now.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I always enjoy coming over to talk to you. So we're going to talk about flex funding first, and it took me a minute to see how this worked because it doesn't look like mine, but this is it. Okay, what is flex funding? And pardon me, but it doesn't look like the slides are coming up appropriately. It didn't start a slideshow.
We'll do this to start with.
Reduce the file size. That's okay. All right,
They
that
get you on the
helps.
screen anyway.
Thank you. Okay, what is flex funding? Flex funding are monies that are shared by KYTC, or the Transportation Cabinet, from the rural secondary apportionment of the revenue sharing funds. The revenue sharing funds, as you know, come from the gas tax. Rural secondary is 22.2% of that total. It's in KRS 177-320 for those of you who'd like to look at it. It tells us how to do that. So we do that to assist counties with repairs and resurfacing of county roads. Historically speaking, in 2010, rural secondary roads that are also known as and commonly referred to as farm-to-market roads were in grade A condition. Based on that fact, the Transportation Cabinet leadership decided to share rural secondary funds for use on county roads until the funds were needed on the rural secondary roads. So they could use it on their county roads until we needed it to use it on rural secondary roads. Hence, flex funding came into existence. Oops. Okay, the flex funds allocation provided to each county is determined by KYTC's Division of Maintenance. The rural secondary roads in each county are reviewed by engineers out of the district, and the level of service ranking of the roads are evaluated, and that is translated into percent of money shared with the counties. These percentages at the bottom, I'm not sure why they're that way, but it's supposed to be 25, 20, 15, and 10, A, B, C, D. There's an updated slide that will be in your materials. And when we look at that, I wanted to make sure that you understand that, like, for example, this sheet right here, I know it's not in the PowerPoint slides, and I'll give you a copy if you want it. But this is what's called our tentative allocation form. And there's way too much information on it for me to try to put it on a slide. So this goes down with each county. And when we look at the FIST formula, you all have heard of the FIST formula before, right? Okay, so when you look at the FIST formula, that FIST formula is applied to the 22.2% in the rural secondary category. And based on that FIST formula, we take the initial allocation from rural secondary, we apply the FIST formula, and that's the initial distribution that stays inside the county. And then the flex funds are determined by the application of this percentage, A, B, C, or D, based on the level of service ranking that's done by the Division of Maintenance. I added, if you notice at the bottom, there's a link. I added that link because you can go take that link and go directly to the Division of Maintenance's allocation or observations and their conclusions regarding the rural secondary roads in each county. Okay, I think the secretary told you this, but I'm going to repeat it. Evaluations and changes are done every 2 years. The next evaluations will be done in FY25. Changes in percentages will be applicable in FY26. Remember the main rule of thumb. This is a thing, I had to think about this for a minute when I became commissioner, and I read this. It's like, the main rule of thumb is the better the rural secondary roads are, the more monies the county gets. And I had to think about that for a little bit. And it makes total sense when you look at this program. The better the rural secondary counties are in the county, the more monies we can share with the counties to do county roads. So changes in flex amounts are changes in flex funding amounts, do not mean that the county is losing the benefit of the monies that's assigned to the county. It only means that more dollars are spent on the rural secondary roads in that county versus the county roads. And once that's done, obviously, the percentage is going to increase, and then the more money will go to the county roads instead of the rural secondary roads. So the monies are not taken away from the benefit or for the benefit of the counties. The counties still benefit from this allocation. It's just shared until the rural secondary roads need work too. You know, some of the folks, some of our community partners I've been talking to, I tell them it doesn't mean that the money's being taken out of your county at all. Not at all. But I assure you that your constituents in your county don't ride on a rural secondary road and think, this is a rural secondary road, I need to call the state versus the county. They're still going to call you, when it comes to calling the community partners, because the monies are used within the county. The only thing that changes is what roads they're used on.
Let me interject something right now.
Yes, sir.
We're not crossing flex with FD 39 when you talk about county roads and
No, sir.
okay.
No, sir. This is all out of the rural secondary 22.2% allotment.
Okay.
It doesn't have anything to do with the 18.3% that's county road aid. That's a separate thing. And then FD 39 is completely separate. Okay? All right, so the FY 2025 anticipated changes, tentatively, and I punctuate that, tentatively, there are 44 counties that will experience a 5% or 10% reduction in shared monies. Now, you might ask, why is this happening now? Well, the reason it's happening now is because I'm a big proponent of letting our community partners know what's going on. And I want them, as they plan for their budget, which they're getting ready to do, they need to know, how much their flex funds are going to be this year. That's one of the big questions we get, is how much will our flex funds be? So that's why they know it now. That's why it was brought to your attention and our attention. But in any event, this results in an anticipated total amount across the state of $3.197 million. That's shared back to the district offices in the area where the county is and used for maintenance on the rural secondary roads within that county. And an important note, I found this very interesting.
Representative Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question while we're on flex spending.
Yes, sir.
Just to clear up things, because I think there's been a misperception
Yes, sir.
by some out there. I got a call from one of my county judges week ago Friday that he had received a call. Flex spending was going to be cut, and he says he was told it was because that we, the General Assembly, was cutting discretionary funds from the governor's budget. And I told him that wasn't the case. But then I followed up with another one of my judges, said, hey, have you heard this? And he said, yeah, it's the flex formula, and we actually fall down on this one, but I understand the formula and how it works. So just a clarification, because apparently some of them are thinking that it's something different than the recalculation formula. So wanted to point that out so you could expand on it, because I knew it was an accurate statement, but just
Yes,
want
sir.
to make sure, because I figure if he's thinking that way, there's probably others out there that's thinking the same way, right?
Absolutely, and
Thank
thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's absolutely not true. That's not any message I've given to anybody, I can assure you that, because that's not true.
No, he didn't say it was you.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear
Well,
that.
I think what Chairman Blanton's suggesting is that we keep sharing the message of what it really is.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
right.
it. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, and we will certainly do that. I have messaging points, and I've been telling the judges exactly what I just told you all. This money doesn't leave your county. it is going to stay right in your county. It'll just be used on a rural secondary road instead of a county road. Okay, so my last point I wanted to make, I was very curious about the implementation of this program, how it came to be, and whatnot. So I looked back to the preparation for FY 2017, which was going on in 16, and printed out all those forms that I just showed you. This one right here. I printed this all out and looked at the percentage changes. And then I certainly don't want to take credit for this. I did not prepare this. My staff did. Miss Gail Smith, sitting in the back, she prepared this for me based on that information. And she got all the figures together for the ups and downs over the course of the last 8 years. And this also includes the tentative or anticipated changes in FY25. And I was shocked at what I came up with. An evaluation of the changes over the last years resulted in a statewide net 0% increase and decrease. And that told me, I mean, somebody else may have another explanation, but it told me that the program works. It works like it's supposed to. I mean, sometimes you get a little more. As a matter of fact, I was talking to one of our community partner judges, and I said, you know, I want to make sure you understand the flex funding. He said, oh, you don't have to worry about me. He said, I've been around a long time. I understand exactly. He said, I got less, you know, before, and then I get a little more, and then I get a little less, and then I get a little more. And that's just the way it works. And I said, well, thank you for understanding. I appreciate that. So I think that is all the questions or all the information that I have. Are there any questions we can answer?
I've got one in particular on the grading of these rural secondary roads. I know on the contingency fund, it's graded on a scale of 1 to 10.
It is.
So on the rural secondary, you grade it on a through D scale?
Let me go through the process with you a little bit. The Division of Maintenance does this, and I didn't put this long list of criteria in there, but they look at the rideability of the road, the appearance of the road, visual obstructions, fencing, guardrail, vertical clearance, potholes, striping, of course the how the asphalt looks, you know, curbs, gutters, drop-offs, rutting, etc. So all of that is taken into consideration, and that's why I just put that link at the bottom.
We got a wrestling match going on next door, I think.
I know, I was sensing there was some diverted attention, and I thought, okay, have I done something? Okay, so there's level of service ranking criteria that the Division of Maintenance uses, and it includes all that stuff I just detailed, and they look at the content or I say content, but all of those factors. And if you go to that website, you can see there's a big chart in there where they've gone out and measured all that criteria, and then that's when it's sent to us as an A, B, C, or D. But you're asking me on the back end, when they get flex funding, they're told how much they're getting, and we rank the roads. What happens there is each county gets to choose their roads under flex. They submit whatever roads they want to submit, and let me grab my paper here. So once they do that, they send us in the flex request form. It's sent to the districts. The districts go out and look at that, and they do that on a yearly basis, okay? Every year, a county can apply for flex funds. When they send in their roads, it goes to the district goes out and looks, and it is a lesser standard than with discretionary. It's a 5 and up. Anything a 5 and up can be allocated on the flex program. And also, Ben's, we're talking about that. If you don't use it in that year, it rolls over. So if if a county has 3 roads they want to do and they end up with $50,000 left, it just rolls over into the next year.
Representative Smith, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also like to record being here today. Sorry for my tardiness. Real quick, and it's what you just alluded to, local participation
Yes, sir.
with judges in physical courts. Is there a particular process that you have in your office that says the local district is to get with the local physical court on their list that you're talking about on the end result before the let on the project? Is there an agreement there? Let's say 5 roads were turned in, you came down and wrote them, and then all of a sudden there's a list put out and it wasn't exactly what the physical court thought it was going to be. Is there a criteria you go by for our locals to have the final say on?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there is safety valves, so they're not just freelancing, they're coming down and making sure that the local
That is
magistrate
correct.
and judges are involved in the final decision.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
There's a whole process for that, and actually it's in the statutes.
Okay, thanks.
So we follow that once each year when the figures all get solidified.
Mm-hmm.
Someone from the local district office will go out and meet with the county.
All right, thank you. Thank you,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Chairman.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for kind of updating us on that. And that's one thing that we wanted to bring you here on this, because
Sure.
we were hearing from county judges that, they were getting cut, and it was partially due to the lack of funding from the legislature. And of course, we've not got
No.
fully to that point yet, so we want to make it clear. So if you all could kind of intimate that to your contacts out in the county,
happy
that'd be
to.
very much appreciated.
We'll do
at
that.
this point.
We'll correct the
Now
record.
we'll move on to the highway contingency projects. And did you have anything that you wanted to discuss on that or update from the last meeting?
Sure. I gave your assistant, Savannah,
Mm-hmm.
an updated list from today. So I have some comments that I would like to make, if that's okay.
Certainly.
I wanted to tell you all, well, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for having us here today. I really appreciate it, because the more we talk about these things, the more we're going to understand each other. But we don't often know each other on a personal basis. And I wanted to share just a little with you. I want you to know that I believe in people, and I believe in good policy over politics. I'm a lawyer who loves and respects the law. I'm a public servant, serving 28 years as a county attorney. I was charged with the responsibility there to represent all my people, regardless of party or politics. And the last 4 years, I've been blessed and proud to serve with and for Governor Beshear and Secretary Gray with a very similar charge, to serve the Transportation Cabinet and all of Kentucky's traveling public through its elected officials in a bipartisan manner. And I'm saying this to you for a reason. It was quickly brought to my attention in 2020 that there was a negative connotation or a negative bias toward the highway contingency account and how it had been operated in the past. And I've been trying to overcome that negative perception through what I'm going to call the promotion of goodwill. I think of it as starting in a valley and hiking up a mountain. And, I feel like we've been hiking up that proverbial Goodwill Mountain for 4 years in efforts to effectuate a change. During that time, our goals in rural and municipal aid have been to be fair and equitable, setting aside political concerns, to employ openness and transparency, to use measured and balanced criteria in funding decisions, to forge and cultivate relationships that promote goodwill with and inspire confidence with our community partners, with our colleagues, and with our legislators. And to promote consistency and application. And I have to admit, that's been the most difficult thing to do. And it's been really difficult because of lack of funding in this category. Have we met all these goals? Well, there's always naysayers. But I can tell you that we, and I mean all of the KYTC and rural and municipal aid staff, we've made a valiant effort. And we're still actively hiking up what I call the Goodwill Mountain. We continue to strive for goal-driven excellence. Whether our efforts produce any goodwill or not still remains to be seen. I understand and appreciate that you may have some questions regarding our pending projects. However, it's important that you understand that our pending list change daily. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say they change daily. We can only give you a snapshot in time, but most importantly, when we prepare to fund projects, our confirmation process will reveal at that point at that point in time, when we go to fund, our process is going to reveal any projects that may have been funded by the applicant through alternative funds and or whether their priority needs have just changed. So our snapshot in time, I just wanted to give you an example. From 2/7, it was 39.2 million. From 2/22, it was 38.9 million. And today, it's 35.9 million.
That's February of, within
February.
February.
What
Right,
did I
you said
say?
2/7, but I just
Oh, okay.
confirming.
February. I'm sorry about that.
clarify.
I want you to understand reasons why. When if I sent the list on 2/7, there may have been some projects on there that were completed, but I didn't know about it yet. Okay? So maybe I didn't know about the completion of the project. Maybe the judge was not aware of submissions from a prior judge, okay? Because with the funding mechanism the way it has been, I told you, I think last time I was here, at the beginning of FY23, we sent out emails and asked folks, if you still want this project on the list. And if you still want this project on the list, we'll carry it over. So we did. So when I appeared last, I explained that fully funding this program would be a very positive step toward improving project tracking and responsiveness to qualified requests. And I'm punctuating that today with a few exclamation points, because that would make my life so much easier. Now, not just that. That's not why I'm saying that. I'm saying that because that's what our communities and our community partners deserve. They deserve to have responsiveness from us. They deserve to have us be able to tell them if we can fund their project. And they deserve to know before next year. That's always been a problem for me. I wanted to also show you, when I tell you that our projects change daily, well, these projects just came in. And I think it's important for you all to see this, because at the, I think it may have been last Thursday, this project came in right here. And here's the picture. This is it looks like a little hole in the blacktop, but if you look at the cracks in it, you know what it actually is? In the other picture, there's 2 holes in the blacktop, and there's actually a sinkhole under 2nd Street. How about that?
In where?
It's in Cave
Cave
City.
City.
I started to say it
Y'all
might
know-
be Monticello because we've got a sinkhole that has its own Facebook or Twitter page in Monticello.
On Facebook, tell them to please fill out a TC 2039. I can't use a Facebook request.
It's called the Monticello sinkhole if anyone wants to look it up on X now.
I didn't know you had that many caves in Monticello. I thought they were just in Barron County and Hart County and Warren County.
So that's a project that's new on the list. And here's another one. Oh, let me make sure I hold this right. What about that? That's out in your district, Representative Blanton. I'm sure you recognize it. This road has fallen off, and the importance of this is there's someone who lives across this creek over there. So EMS has been going out and taking a medicine and stuff like that. But we're getting it done. That's the point, is I want you to know, is we're getting it done. I wanted to take a second, if you all would like to ask any questions, I'm happy to address those.
Well, I'm going to start off, and I think Representative Petrie may have some questions as well. But
Sure.
I mean, we've discussed this program
I'm
with
sure.
you and countless others over the years, and it's one that, from a legislative standpoint, we don't like. And it goes back, I was reading a passage in a book, I think it was Division and Dissension, and I think it's talking about Governor Combs using the discretionary to pay off his votes, to get elected and stuff like that. And that's, that was from back in I think the 40s or whenever he was governor. And it's had a bad reputation over several years. And it's not just Democrat governors. Bevin was as big a offender as we've ever had. And then personally, I've discussed with you where locally, being the chair of the Transportation Committee, where a couple of my local magistrates would turn in their roads to be completed, and they might not get funded. And so the word was passed around locally was, well, Representative Upchurch, he's the chairman of transportation up there, he controls all that, and he didn't want to get your road done. So that's from a personal standpoint, but from just a legislative and a policy standpoint, it has been, we don't like it as a legislature. And after the last meeting, I think you testified, and it was roughly $38 or $39 million in the request, and we requested the list of the 8s, 9s, and 10s. And by happenstance, I just called my local judge and said, hey, tell me about these roads and what magisterial districts are they in, so that I would know. And then he was letting me know that several of them had already been completed. And so we started calling around, and we found, a lot of roads on our list. I think it was 2.8 million, almost 2.9 million that had already been done, and realizing that it's updated, I guess, every day now, because your list that you give us today is 35,967,000, and we were looking at 36 million. So we're getting close, but and obviously we would like to get a more accurate list, so that we know what we're funding, so that we've got more tighter controls on this program, because it has become I think not necessarily anything you all have done, it's just the nature of the program. It's a political football, and so that from a legislative standpoint and from a policy making standpoint, we'd like to improve upon that. So, anybody have any questions? Representative Petrie.
May I make a comment really
Sure.
quickly before we go to the questions? I just wanted you to know that we understand that. That's why we're trying to change this perception. That's why we don't call it the discretionary account anymore. Right. We call it the contingency account, and we're trying to change that perception. And I also just wanted to tell you that if you don't know it, your magistrates told me that, and I told them they were wrong.
Yeah.
That you did call.
Well, they're usually wrong. It would be the first time.
Well, I just wanted you to
Especially
know.
one or two of them.
I didn't let that
Secretary, I
negative
think you know about a
perception sit
couple of them.
there.
We can. Okay. Secretary.
Representative Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, understand, we've had good conversations about this topic for years at this point. So I don't need to get into the policy of it. I've made plain with y'all that it's not secretary, it's not commissioner, it's not something that I'm going to point to and say that either one of y'all have done something wrong and now we're just going to have it out. That's not the case, okay? Back to Chairman Upchurch's point, this discretionary contingent account over decades and decades just has a bad reputation, and I doubt there's anybody in the Commonwealth that's been around that doesn't know about this particular account and how it's been utilized. Not anybody that's ever touched a road, a local road, they would all know about it. We're just trying to get, excuse me, to a spot where we can legitimately fund what is out there and what the actual needs are, and remove the politics. It's not either of you, but remove the politics from the process as much as humanly possible. Will we remove all of it? No, I wish I could say we would. It's just going to be there. But we can get closer and closer because the further away we are from that, the more wasteful we're all being with taxpayer money. So the closer we get to that and removing it, and just looking at A, B, C, D, and looking at 1 through 10, looking for the 5s and up, looking at the 8s through 10s, all of those things are better, good, as I tell my kids, good, gooder, and goodest. It just gets us closer. So I want to make sure we're clear. Now, as far as trying to get to an actual list, yes, it moves all the time, and that's part of the nature of making those requests. You don't know when they're coming in. You're going to get a call on a Friday or Saturday, and it gets in the list. Yep. But what we've got set up in the transportation budget, I think, is a way to get at this better than where we have before for the purposes I've just stated. So we start off with about 11.890 million in the contingency account, from which 5 million goes to Kentucky Pride, 290,000 goes to the Kentucky Transportation Center, not y'all, and about 1.6 that goes to Railroad, which is going to leave you under proposal currently of about $5 million a year that is for, quote unquote, projects of an emergency nature or for projects that relieve a hazardous condition. And that's what that money is left designated for. So when you've got a sinkhole picture, when you've got a call on a Friday night, a Saturday night, those type things, and it's an emergency nature, a hazardous condition, yeah. And we can talk about whether 5, 3, 1, 7, whatever the number is, but there's money that's left aside for that that's not programmed. It is set up for emergencies. In addition to that, we have proposed that there be about $20 million in each fiscal year that would go on top of that emergency $5 million netted, about $20 million a year, which would be for 25 and for 26. And the way it would work as proposed is it's y'all's list, not ours. Y'all know what you're doing, and we accept that data that comes in. Now, we do double check, we oversight, we do check those things. That's part of our job. But the data comes in from you. We have a process set up for this particular session so that we can create a list by a resolution and say of the 20 million or whatever the dollar figure ends up at, then we can do final authorizations through a resolution that says, bump, 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 these get funded according to what was submitted from transportation for the 8s, 9s, and 10s. And those would be simply let out this coming year, calendar year, as we move through this calendar year. And then the second part of the process would be we would repeat for a resolution in a 25 session, which would get the next year in the biennium. What we would do in between is, as you receive those applications for contingency account money, and as the engineers go out and score those 8, 9, and 10, as those things are scored, then that would get reported from transportation over to the General Assembly at least 30 days after the scoring, within a 30-day rotating, so we would have an updated list that we could continue to check right along with you and could make sure that it gets updated in case someone finds another funding source or something else that's available. So that when we come back in session, we can do another programming year of whatever funds are set aside for the county priority projects program. And in the meanwhile, we've still got each cycle a certain amount of money that's designated for emergency and hazardous conditions, so that when you get those odd calls and those unexpected events, there's something there that you can respond to, particularly under this type of program. You may have other monies available. That will get us a decent list built, both with the executive branch and with the General Assembly, to make sure that we have good authorizations, good use of taxpayer money. And it's not that there's anything that's been done wrong, but so as we're trying to get this list together, we've got a certain number that has been talked about over at least the last 6 to 12 months of how much it's underfunded. Okay, that's coming down not just because of there were some projects that were done, but there were also duplicates in the system. There were other things that would not have been efficient uses of taxpayer money. I think if we can build that list together, it's going to be mainly on y'all. And we will collaborate with you as much as we can, but we'll build that list. That'll take care of immediate type programming. And even though the transportation budget says projects submitted to the General Assembly by transportation after November 1 or December 1 may not be funded, may not be part of the resolution. Right now, we're sitting on February the 26th, and we don't have a resolution out the door, which means we're still receiving projects. Now, you have to have an expectation of when the window closes, but it doesn't necessarily close as scheduled. So we can go through January, February, even into March on every session before that resolution closes out. And then you've just got a matter of months before we're back in January again, plus you have an emergency account that's sitting there, and we can talk about whether 1357, whatever it's the appropriate number, the emergency account can deal with the rest of those issues that can't be programmed, planned out. Again, I have nothing to say that Secretary Gray has done anything untoward. I have nothing to say that Commissioner Lewis has done anything untoward. This is trying to address a decades-long process that has been known to not work well, and we're just trying to find a process that makes it work better. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I'll speak.
Secretary Gray?
Yep. First off, thank you, Representative Petrie, for meeting with us several times. Really appreciate that. I think I want to make a couple of points. One is about the remedy that is being proposed, and I would characterize it in my view, based on being in this role for a little over 4.5 years, that the remedy may be greater pain than the problem. And why is that? Well, I brought a couple of rolls of pennies with me today that represent a dollar, or let's say 100% of our budget. $3.9 billion is the transportation budget, annual budget. And out of that, I got 1 penny, which would represent $38 million, which is the backlog of projects today. 1 penny, or 1% of the budget, is the backlog of what we characterize, and our engineers. This is not, and I hear the comment about political, but the reason that I have to push back on that is it's just not political. These are engineers that are making these decisions, that are making these judgments on the character, the composition, the quality, or the deterioration of these roads in real time. So this penny is that 38 million, or 1%. And what's being proposed is to cut that penny into basically tenths and give us a little over 1/10 of 1 penny, or 1%, to work with emergency conditions. And the reason that and this is a healthy conversation. We appreciate it. But we feel also strongly about it because we don't feel like anybody, the people don't see Democrats or Republicans making decisions. They see the government making decisions. They don't see an administration. They don't see Jim Gray or Bobby Joe Lewis or Andy Beshear or individuals, I don't think. They see the government. And the reason that I feel so vigorously, strongly convinced about this is that the needs are in real time. And if we delay the cycle time, Representative Branscombe, we talk about cycle time in construction, the cycle time in a project. If we delay the cycle time on decision making, then we're creating a less efficient process. And certainly, in my view, we're creating more danger and more safety hazards for the driving public, for our constituents. So that's the reason that we want to and that we have worked hard to, or we've worked with a good deal of commitment to trying to illustrate the needs of these projects, what they represent, and that they are occurring. I've said it 2 or 3 times already, but in real time. And I simply, I just don't see how the new process would be more efficient or even less, just more efficient. I just don't see how, if you're delaying the decision making.
I appreciate that. So delaying decision making. Right now in this session, we would have a resolution that goes out that authorizes $20 million to go now. That would happen now.
20 million that the cabinet could then
That would have
utilize
the
for the
resolution.
backlog.
I'm sorry, the resolution would have, from the list provided from transportation, it would have listed what we can get in, whether it stays at 20 million or not. That's always up to debate. Whether it stays at 5 on discretionary is always up to debate. But we would have a resolution that would go out this session that would authorize projects. That's pretty immediate. As we build the list between April and December of 24, we're back in session in 25 and authorizing again. And in the meanwhile, while we're building that plan collaboratively, there is a certain amount of money, at least 5 at this point, that Department of Transportation has that is treated as it always has been, in your discretion, except for we say emergency hazardous condition. Now, if that language needs to be worked on, or we need to work on what the $5 million amount is, or 20 million each year that's going out, the first thing would be, but we're telling you there's a $38 million backlog. Well, you were. Now we're saying it's a 36, and we're going to continue to look at it. We're going to see where we get to.
So you're saying you draw down on the 20 million
Yes.
that you would draw down on that operationally all the time.
Correct.
We would
So
be
you've
drawing
got
down on
20 set up in the first
how you
FY
understood
and 20 set up in the second FY. And in 25, you've got 5 available that's purely discretionary for emergency and hazard. And you've got 5 again in 26 for emergency hazard. So right now under current proposal, there's 25 that's moving, 5 still discretionary, emergency hazard, and 20, we're going to be in cycle for the first one. And then when we come back in January of 25, there would be another resolution that comes out with a collaborative list that goes for the next funding for the next time. So we're not talking about a 2-year delay. We're not even talking about a year delay from where we are now to get the first round out. This is why we're asking and trying to work on the list right now. Can we get a good list into the resolution and get those projects authorized? That's why we've inquired. Are there duplicates? Are there things that have already been taken care of?
So
have they found funding elsewhere? Have they changed their mind? We're trying to get that list as accurate as possible so that that first resolution goes out with as little waste of money and lost opportunities of money as possible. Now, to address the point about the pennies, I appreciate that. But I am from Todd County. In particular, I'm from Clifty. And I'm not accusing you of this, okay? But I hope I never get to the point of minimizing the impact and importance of $38 million in tax money.
That's why I was making that point.
Yeah, so that
Because it's
$38
so
million,
important.
I'm going to be and my cohorts here understand what I mean because they've all had these difficult conversations with me. I will be as tough on 38, on 8, on 3, on 800,000. I went to bat over 330,000 on Friday and wouldn't give up because it's tax money, not our money, whether it be road tax or whether it's general fund tax or whatever. So this is why we're trying to get to that process and make sure it is effective and efficient as humanly possible.
And we're both chasing the same rabbit then.
Very good.
We are both after efficiency. Now, if you all are looking at a placeholder of 20 million that we work from as a pool of funds, and then you're measuring that against the $39 million, or you've put that in as a placeholder, is that my interpretation?
Okay, so let me
Correct
make
or
sure,
not?
and we can get into translation problems
Yeah.
from yours and from mine.
Yeah.
But what we have is this: 20 million set aside for local roads in 25. 20 million set aside in 26. That would be authorized for the 25 cycle with a resolution in this session in 24, which means technically you're looking at July 1, but it can be earlier than that. It can be earlier than that if necessary. And we have worked well enough, if not well, together trying to make sure we understand what you see and what we're concerned about. So yes, there's 20 and 20 plus there's 5 million and 5 million that is left, and this is not a bad thing. It's left discretionary because there will be sinkhole pictures. There will be calls on Saturday, and we can't programmatically plan for that in a resolution.
And
that's why there's a component of that.
Yeah. And what we're saying, Representative Petrie, is that the 5 million, absent any other funds, is not sufficient, and is not sufficient for even conditions that we would describe as emergency nature. Now,
So luckily, we're not talking about just 5. We're talking about 25 and 25.
I would like to make sure that we're
Let me interject something here.
interpreting.
He's talking about 20,
Translating.
25 and 25. 20 million of it, you've given us a list, and
Yes.
we're looking at in
So
the
you're saying that
upper 30s.
Yeah.
So the 20 million would knock out 20 million of that 30 some odd thousand
39,
or 39,
36,
39,
39, whatever
whatever
that,
we arrive at that
whatever
list.
that snapshot is.
And then you still got $5 million left over. So we're knocking out, basically in the biennium, this $38 million or 30, whatever it is all completed. We will do a resolution, get it done, half of it in this biennium or in this year, the other half next year. You see. But we will
You mean-
list those roads and pass them by
million a year?
resolution each year.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Petrie, yes.
Yeah, thank you. And so, you understand where we're trying to get to a list and know exactly
Yeah.
what the dollar figure is for current in this session, what we're looking at. Once we get that, we can talk about whether 20 is accurate or good enough. We can talk about, as I've said
I see
before,
where you're going.
whether 5 is
Okay.
accurate enough
Okay.
on true
Okay.
discretion.
We see where you're.
But that's the process that's been set up. I don't have a list, we don't have a list right now with which we have a degree of confidence that we can go, okay, yeah, we need to put 39 million in because that has changed. Likely will change a little more.
Yeah.
That's just part of
Well,
it. There are
we're-
a lot
yeah.
of projects in there. There's going to be details. It's hard to manage. So, I mean, this is the process that we're coming up with. Again, I go back to 20 in each year, and we can talk about whether that's the right number. 5 in each year on pure discretion for emergency hazards, we can talk about whether that's the right number. But that process meets immediate needs and keeps us going every year and still gives discretion over a certain amount of money to transportation to deal with the most immediate needs. I think this is a good process. And as long as we can continue to work collaboratively in building that list every year, then that list is going to be a good list. We're not going to waste taxpayer money. If things have been dealt with, we're going to be utilizing that money more effectively than we've ever used it before.
Well, my interpretation, and I don't think I'm wrong on this. My interpretation is certainly that we're considering these issues in good faith, and we all are. We know that there are these needs out there, and we're all trying to remedy those challenges. And what I hear that the sentiment is to acknowledge that these are bona fide projects, but your job is to confirm. What was it Ronald Reagan said? Trust but verify. So we understand that that's what we're trying to achieve here, right?
Yes, it is.
What?
Any other questions?
And Mr. Chairman,
Well,
if I may.
Sure.
No, I think-
Sorry,
Chairman
but
Petrie?
and just so we're clear, we're on the record right now. So what I've said is what I meant to say. No corrections. That process has been set up. I look forward to talking to one or both of you over how do we develop that process even better than we have first imagined. That's great. I'll leave that doorway open.
Okay.
The table is open at any point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Do you have something else?
Well, how are we on time, Mr.
What time
Chairman?
is it? We got
We got 5 minutes.
Actually, we've
I
got,
w-
you got about 2 minutes.
2. All right.
Two.
Well, we do appreciate the conversation and the engagement on this FD39 and the spirit of it. We do appreciate that. I do want to say that once the House bill, once 265 was introduced, we of course have some thoughts about that. We're particularly anxious about the $300 million that was provided in the governor's recommended budget for the general funds that could be used to push forward the I-69 and the Mountain Parkway projects. Our experience with the Brent Spence was that those funds, as an incentive for grant funding, were very beneficial. So we want to make that observation. We're also anxious about and concerned about the reduction of maintenance funds. It does appear that the budget has been reduced, and in maintenance, we know that we all know that that's a real challenge that we all have. And removing it and taking funds from the maintenance fund and committing it to projects is still a challenge for us. So I just want to put those thoughts out there. If you all will, as we navigate the session, that we can keep thinking about it and talking about it and discussing it.
We've got
Thank you, Mr.
a ways
Chairman.
to go yet.
You said 2
Representative
minutes.
Petrie, do you have something?
I'm going to try to
Just
do
respond
it
to that.
as quickly as I can. The $300 million in general fund that's being requested for the Mountain Parkway as well as the I-69. We've had conversations about that some, I think, at the end of late last year. That can be used out of road fund, which could reduce new programming. It could come out of that rather than general fund, and traditionally that would have been. I don't know that it makes any difference of whether it comes out of a road fund designation or a GF designation, other than the impact of that to other issues.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also understand, and I may be completely inaccurate, but my understanding at this point is that the preliminary request on those two projects has not fared well, and we may be back in another go at them. I would hate to commit money without knowing that we've got something in front of us. Secondly, on the maintenance, and as to all other things, how long the bill has been out, I've not gotten any feedback on that portion of it from anyone. That's not anybody's fault. I'm just saying I've gotten no feedback. If I haven't received feedback, I have nothing to work with. So if there's anything out there, just please let me know.
Absolutely. We're just introducing. We're working on it over the weekend, so it's actually first emerging. But thank you, Representative Petrie.
Representative Tackett-Lafferty, did you have a very quick question?
A very quick question, and if there is no quick answer, I'm happy to have someone reach out. So my quick question is maintenance funds versus emergency projects. Like, for instance, with the tornadoes and the flooding in eastern Kentucky, where do those repairs generally come from?
I'm sorry,
it be
Representative
maintenance?
Tackett-Lafferty. The question is?
The question is, you were talking about emergency projects on these local roads.
Out of the FD39 account.
Yes,
right.
yes. And you're also talking about reducing the maintenance. In situations of emergency flooding or such as tornadoes, where do those repairs generally come from? Is it the maintenance?
Substantial amount of those funds, of course, were coming from FEMA reimbursements.
Okay.
And from the state fund as well.
Okay.
The state safe fund. Thank you, Representative Petrie. Okay. I knew it started with an S. Safe funds.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Being
you,
no
sir.
further questions,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We do now stand adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.